We are Mike and Jeannie, and we restore old houses. In 2021, we moved to South Carolina and bought a 120-year-old Victorian house. Follow along as we put the polish back on this Victorian masterpiece.
Welcome back to 1834 Restoration House.
Today's episode is all about solving electrical problems. We have a lot of them. Now that we have a new service entrance and reliable power coming in, we can start to address some of the problems that have been bugging us for a while.
Mainly in the kitchen. Let's tackle that.
We have a couple of other mysterious ones we haven't talked about, so we'll take a look at those as well.
Yeah.
Okay, electrical mystery number one. This is the switch right inside the front door. And this one controls the entryway light. This one here does nothing. We can't figure out what it's doing. So I have my voltmeter set for AC volts. I'm going to look across the terminals of the switch. Now, if the circuit is energized, I would expect to see voltage across the switch terminals.
Nothing.
We have nothing. So what that means is either there's no load or we have a bad wire nut back in here. So let's pop it open and take a look. But first we need to kill the power. Okay, the breaker is off. Let's make sure the power is cold. Let's take this light switch out and have a look. When you get into these old houses, there's just no telling what you're going to find in the way of electrical things. Well, you suppose that has anything to do with it? It's not even wired up. All right. Okay, that takes it to a whole new level of crazy. We actually found a couple of these in our last house up in New York. We were just kind of getting ready right towards the end before we moved out, trying to fix a few electrical problems, and we had these two switches that would never do anything, and sure enough, they weren't even hooked up. This appears to be an abandoned circuit. We don't know what, we don't know where or why, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave it that way. Now they do sell a special device that looks like a switch, but it's not a switch. So instead of having a handle, it basically has a plastic plug, and that's to fill the hole in the cover plate. Yeah, make it clear that there's no switch there. We'll go ahead and buy one of those. Electrical mystery number two is in the downstairs bedroom. The switch that does nothing. We've plugged lamps into all the outlets and tried operating the switch, and it doesn't make any difference whether the switch is up or down. All of the outlets work. So let's find out what's going on under here. Look at this antique light switch plate. It has ribs on it. You just don't see that anymore. Okay, let's get the inductive tester here and see if there's any power. Okay, there is power. Okay, I'm going to measure across the terminals and see if I have 120 volts. Nothing.
0.2, 0.4, 1 point.
Okay, so what that's telling us is that there's no load. So.
Is it connected like the last one?
It is. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. The wire goes straight down. So maybe going under the house might yield some clues. On the other side of the wall is a closet. This is in our tool room. And you can see the Romex pops through the wall and then heads down and goes under the house through a hole in the floor. So that explains the Romex that I saw under the house. And then I traced that Romex across, and it went right over to the other side of our bedroom. I traced the cable to a return air duct in the corner of the room. Since this basically constitutes the corner of the room, that would have to be this. So the cable goes on the back side of this and pops up into the wall. Now we need to find out what's on the other side. The only thing going on here that I can tell is this light switch at the bottom of the grand staircase. So let's take off this vintage cover plate and have a look inside. All right. I'm looking for any Romex that comes up inside this box. I don't see anything at all except for antique wire. So why would Romex be going up through here? Unless it's going up above We're at the top of the stairs, and according to my eyeball measurements, it seems to come up right about here and go somewhere. Let's go on the other side of this wall. That puts it in here. So what is going on here? I think I found our wire. It comes out right here, goes up over the top here, then goes up into the ceiling. And from there, it very likely comes down this ridge and into this big electrical junction box mess here. All right, so apparently there's something going on up here above the ceiling. We don't know what. Maybe squirrels got in there and chewed something out. We don't know. But there's no power there where there should be, and that is somehow tied down to the switch in the master bedroom. Why? We don't know. So electrical mystery number 2 remains unsolved. We spent most of the day doing reconnaissance and research of our electrical systems, and we've identified 3 things that we want to do. First, what I want to do is take these 2 circuits right here. I want to pull them back down into the house, terminate them in a junction box, and then run a new cable over to our brand new breaker panel and power that back on. This box can go away. Project number 2 is to run a whole new set of cables from our kitchen range, which is over there, all the way over to our new breaker panel. And what that will do for us is enable us to get rid of this right here. Project number 3. All of the cables above the kitchen have been chewed by squirrels, severely. We've already replaced 2 of them because they were in imminent danger, but there's still a few up there that need to be redone. So we'll replace all of those as well. We have 2 very large cables here. One of these probably goes to the range in the kitchen. The other one probably goes back to the breaker box. And we don't know which one is which. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And I'm going to throw this off. And I want to see which side of that is energized. Because we're working with 240 volts here, I've got my meter set to the 600 volt maximum range. Let's see, now one side of this or the other has energy on it. Okay, that side has nothing. It also has fuses on it. So this is the load side. This side here would have to be the supply side. And if you can see that over my shoulder, we have 246 volts there. So that one, which is this is the supply cable. That goes back to the old breaker box. Also on the load side is this box here, which has 2 fuses on it. And good catch. It goes down to this cable. Actually, there's 2 cables. What's happening here is that it's converting the 240 into double 120s. And so these go down into the floor and disappear into who knows what. So what I'd like to do now is see if I can identify what we just turned off. I have 100% certainty that this range is off. Okay, the light switch did nothing. And we know that that works because we've used it recently. Let me just kick on a burner here and make sure nothing happens. Yeah, the range is dead. Okay, so we know what that is now. That means that this entire circuit can be replaced with a new circuit going to the new breaker box. This keeps getting stranger by the minute. So this box here, it's basically a disconnect switch with double fuses, has 2 wires that head straight to the floor and then disappear into the crawl space. And that circuit is off. I've gone around this entire house and I've turned on every single light in this house and they're all working fine. Just on a hunch, I went outside with my circuit tester and I plugged this into the outlet on the front porch and it was dark. Okay, so then I came back in here, turned it back on, confirmed that it was light. All right, so now we know where one of them goes. Then I thought maybe the one on the back deck might be connected with this also. So with it still off, I went and plugged it in and I got light. So we know that this does not feed the back deck. So I had Jeannie come out and help search around the house for any outdoor outlets. She found another one on the front porch over on the other side where we never go, and we honestly didn't even know it was there until today. But we found it, plugged it in, it was dark, and then I had her operate the switch a couple of times just to confirm that it was in fact correct. So these two wires here feed the outdoor outlets on the front porch, which is great news because we can rerun those under the house to the new breaker panel, and this entire box here can go away and all of the circuitry. All right, we're going to go after the low-hanging fruit first. We're going to wire up the two outdoor outlets, and I've got this brand new breaker here. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's that bright orange window right there. That shows that the breaker is tripped, and that's how it comes from the factory. We'll go ahead and put this on here. I have to be careful because the system is hot. All right, so there it is. Coincidentally, there's a hole right here, and this is where the inspector told us to put a breaker, and that's exactly what we're doing today. So next up, we'll go ahead and close this for safety. This is called MC cable. It's armored. And this is what we're using on all of our new stuff because squirrels can't chew it. Now this is a special tool they make for cutting it. So what I do is lay this in like that, clamp it, and I turn the crank a few times. Make sure it's set. Okay, here we go. At first it's kind of crunchy, and then it gets easy. As soon as it gets easy, it's time for it to come off. And right there is where it's cut. Now I'm going to pull off the sheath. So, now all of this is going to go inside that conduit. Okay, this is our junction box where all of the electrical goes to the breaker panel. So I'm going to go ahead and drill a small hole. Okay, now I'm going to drill a bigger hole. This is called a knockout, and this is for 1/2-inch trade size. So I just put it on like so. Okay, now we turn the screw in, and what that does is it cuts out a metal slug. It gives us a nice place to put a clamp for the electrical. It feels like we may have cut through. There it is. This is an MC bushing, and this is a sleeve. And I'm just going to push this over that and slide it down in there like so. What this does is it provides a barrier so the sharp edge of the metal can't cut the wires. And this has to be put on just a certain way. I think, there we go, that's much better. Okay, now I slip this in here like that. And then I want that red tab to stick out one of these slots. And I'll go ahead and put this clamp back on here like so. I'm tightening down the clamp. Now, we'll take our wire and put it through the hole. Be careful not to gouge it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in there like so. And then put the nut on. Now this cable here needs to go through this hole to the outside and up into the breaker box. I'm preparing the ground wire now to go on the ground bus. Our next stop is going to be the black, which is the hot. And so that one's coming up here. And it needs to go into there. So I'm going to cut it a little bit long. Okay, let's go ahead and put the black wire in. Bring our white wire, which is our neutral, and we'll bring it over here. And I think I'll just put it right there. We're clamping up the cable. So we're just going to work our way all the way over to where the junction box is on the other side. Okay, we're on the other end now. I mounted a junction box here. These are the two wires that we're going to pull out, and we'll bring them in here. This is our armored cable. It's hard to do this when things in the way like that.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. That breaks that. Now what I need to do is come downhill just a little bit, maybe about 6 inches, and then do it again. I'll show you why in a second. Okay, now we have a piece here that's cut in two places. So I'm going to twist it apart and grab my cutters. And on the far end, I want to go ahead and cut the wires right here. Then I pull that off. See what just happened there? These are the wires that I'm going to use to connect my circuit. Okay, here is one of the cables that goes to the front where the porch outlets are. And this is the other cable. They both went up through these holes here, and Jeannie pulled them down. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut off the excess. So there's one. And we'll do the same thing with this one as well. Just about like that, probably. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and put these through. I have a clamp here. Everything's all done properly. And I'll put that one in there as well. Get them worked around the way I want them. And tighten down the clamp. Okay, let's go ahead and apply wire nuts to these. Give it a pull test. Okay, that's good. Now let's bring forth our white wires. All right. See that? Pull test? Ah, see that? That's why we do a pull test. We want to make sure that they're all in and stay in. So let's put that one back in the bunch.
All right, we'll tuck the ground in there and leave it for the future. And we'll put the other two in here like so. And everything feels good. All right, now, to really finish the job, we need to put a cover plate on. Always have a cover plate. You would be shocked at how many houses have junction boxes in them where the covers are off and the wires are just hanging out. Electrical inspectors love to find that kind of thing when they're inspecting a house. I'll go ahead and trip this breaker all the way off. And I'll turn it back on. It didn't trip. That's good news. We have power. Since we took these wires out and ran them to our new breaker panel, this box is no longer needed. So let's come in here and disconnect the wires which go to that box. Now, one of the things that came up during the house inspection was he found that some of these were double terminated, and that's a big no-no. You cannot have two wires under the same terminal. So now that frees up the terminal for only the stove, but even that's temporary. Okay. That part is loose. Let's see if we can get this to come out. All right. Some of this old wire is really stiff. Okay, that is now disconnected. All right, we'll close that, turn that back on. That gives us back our stove. Now, that means this box is done. How do we get it out of here? Okay, there we go. That box no longer does a thing.
Now it's time to run a new circuit for the oven and range. So what we're going to do is take these cables down here, we'll put them in conduits, and we'll string them all the way across underneath the house over to the kitchen, and then we'll bring it up in the breaker box and hook it up. So the first thing I'm going to do is break these out. This is going to be black. This is already green. So we need to take one of these and tag it red. So I'll just take some red electrical tape. And I'm just putting a tag on there. This is not permanent. I'm just putting it on there so we know which is which. And then I do the same to the other end. And then this one here will be white. Why 4 wires? Why not 3? Well, the reason is you have A phase and you have B phase, that's black and red. You have neutral, which is white, and that's your traditional stove connection. But these days, they want to see a separate ground. So this will be the separate ground that goes all the way to the stove. And as part of this process, we're also changing out the outlet and the cord which goes to the stove, and so everything will be brought up to modern code. Okay, I've got my red, black, white, and green. I'm going to go ahead and just slip these in the conduit now and just push them through until they come out the other side. Okay, and there they are. And now we pass into conduit number 2. It's a whole lot easier to do it this way than if I had just glued everything together. The other thing I did is I stretched all the cables out in the yard so they're laying flat. That way they don't twist, curl, or get caught on anything that they shouldn't be. Okay, there it just popped out the other end. Section number 3. These modern cables are made to be pulled through conduits, and they're super smooth, super slick, and they just glide right through. And now, conduit number 4. And they're there. Okay, I'm going to assemble the conduits now using electrical conduit glue. We want to make sure that we don't get it inside because we don't want to stick the wires together. Looks like I put a little too much on there, but that's all right. Okay, it's already firmed up. Okay, that's good. Since these aren't used for plumbing, we don't have to use primer first. We just go ahead and use the adhesive directly. Now it's time to drag our big electrical snake under the house and put it in place. Let's see if we can set up the inside outlet. First I'll take off the door. Try doing that with a modern oven. And then we'll pull the range out. Well, this thing has a really short cord on it. It's already coming out of the wall, so I'm going to see if I can squeeze myself back in here. I used to be a lot thinner than this. Okay, cord is out. Always kill the power before working on electrical systems.
Woo.
This is the stove's electrical outlet. As you can see, it's the old 3-prong system, which we've used for decades, and it's fine, it works, but the modern ones have an extra conductor, which is ground. This wire appears to be coming from here. I thought, well, now, wait a minute, that's some kind of really bad electrical work there. Well, as it turns out, it doesn't. It actually goes down here and it pops through the same hole that this one goes through. They're just sharing a hole. That's the only thing that's going on there, so don't sweat it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take this off, but first, safety check. Okay, it's dead. That's what it looks like inside. This looks like fairly modern cable. But when we did the work underneath the house, getting up to this point, we weren't able to show you a lot of it just because it was very difficult to get a camera back in there. But what happened was we have this really old cable that goes from that big switch type box. It comes under the floor, goes to a junction box, and then switches down to a much, much smaller size cable. So the cable that's in here right now is not sized correctly for that oven. We're going to correct that today.
First, I'm going to just disconnect everything. Okay. Well, there we have it.
This is a brand new surface mount 4-conductor outlet. And it comes with screws and a clamping kit. So we basically have to put this thing together.
Okay, the first thing we want to do is make sure that these get marked because I have to clip them down. This is a little too long, so I'm going to take some red tape and just put a marker down here somewhere. This one's a permanent one, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'll make it about an inch, maybe a little more than an inch. This allows any future electricians to identify the cable on both ends as to which phase it is. So here's my red, here's my white, so we'll go ahead and do the same thing there. The black one we don't care about, and neither do we care about the green because they're already black and green. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut these, probably a little longer than we need, and I'm just going to shove the excess back down under the house. It helps to have some good sharp cutters. Now, because I pinched the wires when I cut them, I'm going to come along and pinch them back to round again. Okay, it's time to strip the wires. I'm going to start with the 2 phases first because they're on the outside of the outlet box. Okay, we'll bring these 2 in through the hole in the bottom, and then they need to separate. Okay, good. There's one. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down. It's important to have good tight connections because we don't want any electrical resistance that can generate heat. Okay. Now we need the neutral. And now it's time for the ground. In the electrical world, green is always ground, and if you look carefully, you can see that this one screw terminal here is colored green, and you'll see that all the way through the electrical world. The new outlet connected up to the new cables.
This is a very old range, and I was looking at some of the tags here, and it says this is not designed for aluminum wiring, which is interesting because the wiring that came from the fuse box over there is aluminum. All right, we're correcting that today. It also says that the range comes equipped with a separate ground terminal, and they do recommend a 4-wire system, so that's good. The range is already set up to go, and I'll show you how to make that conversion. So first, let's take the back off. Oh, it goes up. Okay. All right, so here are the terminals. Let's get this old cord off of here. To think that one of the owners of this house went down to an appliance dealer many, many decades ago and shopped around, liked this stove and bought it and brought it home. Or more likely, somebody brought it to her and then installed it. I'd like to draw your attention to the green ground screw. But you see that there's a strap underneath there, and that strap comes up into here and connects up to the neutral. So we're going to have to break that now. So let's undo the green screw. I bent this up out of the way so it won't cause us any problems, but we don't want the neutral and the ground tied together anymore. Okay, so I'm going to start with the ground because it's the hardest one to get to. We'll bring over the white screw here, which goes up underneath. It's nice how electrical wiring is all color-coded. You have your whites, your reds, your blacks, and your greens. That way there's no doubt about what goes where. Everything's good and tight. Now let's take care of the clamp. We'll just push this up inside here like that. All nice and neat. Everything tight. Nothing touching things that they shouldn't be touching. Let's put the cover back on. A new cord on an old stove. This is a 50 amp breaker for our 50 amp stove circuit. I think I'll put that over here. There we go. Sometimes it takes a firm push. Notice that they come from the factory in the off position, or like the other day, it was in the tripped position. But either way, it needs to be off before we'd make any connections. Is it safe to work in this box when it's turned on? The answer is yes, as long as you understand what you're doing. The cables are in. Let's start cutting them and terminating them. We'll start with the ground. For all of you electricians watching, this wire we've been pulling in is THHN. In these breaker panels,
Generally, you'll see a strip of lugs on the outside edges, sometimes on the bottom edges. Those are always ground bars. These ones up here on the side, these are neutral bars. And if you don't understand the difference between the two, you shouldn't be working on it. Okay, this looks like the neutral because it has the white stripe. I'm going to go ahead and bring that up and measure off how much we need to cut. So I'm thinking probably somewhere right about here would be good. Now, because that's neutral, and because I just cut off my white stripe, I need to put another white stripe back on it. The building codes say that if you're not using the wire of the correct color, that you have to colorize that wire with the correct color electrical tape. Otherwise, the guy who comes along behind you isn't going to know what's going on. Okay, that takes care of neutral. Okay, now for the red, which in my system has been the A phase. So I will cut it about here, I think. And again, because we cut the red tag off there, I'm going to go ahead and put another one on right over here. When I went to buy the wire, I asked for 60 feet of red, 60 feet of black, 60 feet of green, and 60 feet of white. But with the shortage of components and parts these days, all they had was green and black, which is okay and perfectly legal, so long as you tape it to show what color it is. This is the kind of day I like. Perfect spring weather, birds chirping, warm, clear skies. This is the last wire. Good and tight, because we don't want there to be any resistance in there that can heat up, because resistance makes heat, which makes fire. We don't want any fires in our house. All right, I'm just going to take a moment to dress the cables, make them nice and neat. All right, you know what that means. It's time to go test it. Breaker stayed on, that's good. Let's go inside and check the voltages. Well, we can assume that everything is good, but my technical mentors when I was a young man taught me, never assume anything. So before we plug that range in, I want to know without a doubt that the voltages are correct here. So across the two phases I have 244 volts, which is correct. And then I should have 120-ish across one phase to neutral. I have 119 there. And I have 126 there. That's quite a difference. But they did find a problem with the transformer outside, so we're just going to ignore that for now. And just out of curiosity, I want to see if there's any continuity here to ground. And yes, there is. So our ground system is working good. All right, everything is perfect. Okay, let's pull this up close. And I'm going to plug it in. This thing is like trying to wrestle an anaconda.
Good firm push. Now, let's turn it on and see what happens. So, if I turn on the burner, I should get a light here somewhere, I think. Yeah, there's a light. Okay, that's good. And let me just try them all to make sure they're working. That's good. That's good. That's good. Oven. Good. Okay, that's great. Let's put it back in. It's time to close this all back up again. Now that the range has a new power system, I'm going to take out the old system so that nobody ever tries to reuse it again. I was just looking at the box here. It says Square D Company, Detroit 11, Michigan. Now, for those of you who haven't been around as long as I have, that may not make sense. Back in the old days, before they had zip codes, they used to use numbers, Detroit 11. That depicts a certain area of Detroit. Well, along came zip codes later and they got rid of all that. But anyway, you can still find those on pieces of old equipment. And as usual, we always want to check to make sure the circuit is dead before we touch it. This was the power for the range, and it no longer does anything, so it's coming out. Look at that. Oh, ho, ho, ho. This whole cable is just disintegrated when I put the wrench on it. That's sketchy. That is so sketchy. But fortunately, it's dead. We'll never use it again. Take a look at this. This was state of the art back in the 1950s, but over time, it's come apart. It's just no good anymore. No good. So it's out of the box now. I'm going to go ahead and release it from here. We'll crawl into the house and pull it out. So we won't show that on film, but we are going to take this out of here so nobody ever tries to use this again. Well, this video is getting to be ridiculously long, but we did get a lot done, and that sure is sketchy.
I'm glad it's replaced, though.
Me too. Me too. So there's no more fear. We've taken all the high-powered circuits off the old electrical system now, and I think we're in good shape. But I think it's time to end this video, and we'll get back to work, and we'll start making another one because we have more electrical work up there.
Yes. So thank you for watching 1834 Restoration House.